Yaho, Happy Trans Day of Visibility. Depending on where you're from, this video might be a day late since I'll probably be uploading this more than halfway into the 31st where I am. But anyway, I wanted to talk about 5 of the manga series that features or focuses on trans characters. Because as a trans guy myself, I've always appreciated being able to see myself or my experiences reflected in the media that I consume. This is more of a ramble review than a recommendations list, and since I'll be featuring screenshots from some scenes, there will be some spoilers. Although since these are all slice of life manga, I personally feel like they can be enjoyed without having much taken away from them, even after the review. But if you're bothered by spoilers or want to go into the manga completely blind, then please feel free to click away. The 4 series that I will be talking about will be Wandering Sun, Niku or Hagu, Shimanami Tasogare, and last but definitely not least, one of my all-time favorites, Kanojo ni Naritai, Kimi to Boku. Let's start with what I'm assuming is the most popular series when people talk about trans rap in anime and manga, which is The Wandering Sun. Wandering Sun follows Shuichi Nitori, one of the prettiest kids in school, who, much to her dismay, was assigned male at birth. She is childhood friends with a tomboyish classmate who does not identify as a girl, and the two of them find solace in each other's relatability. The story details their growth journey through puberty, falling in love, making friends, and tackling difficult choices. The series was probably the first portrayal I found as a kid when searching for relatable trans media, and it carries with it a nice bittersweet balance that keeps it within the slice of life category. There are countless well-produced reviews on this series, so instead I would like to focus on 2 non-main characters. While Wandering Sun was very helpful to young me, seeing kids around my age with similar struggles and internal dilemmas, I think the so-called societal passability of the main characters made me more jealous than anything. Passability isn't a thing that bothers me much anymore, nor do I believe that our presentation should be something that can be graded to validate or invalidate our identity. But the character that I felt the closest to would be my best girl, Mako. More often than not, I feel like in anime and manga that covers the topic of being trans, a large majority of the characters are represented to have features that resemble the stereotypical features of the gender that they identify as, or behave in a way that's expected of said gender identity, or have unwavering conviction and certainty about their identity. I love how Mako falls into none of these boxes. The way she's able to enjoy her femininity despite not having features as soft as Nitori, or not being as conventionally pretty. She isn't 100% certain about her identity either, with the way she questioned whether she was compelled to present as female because of her sexuality, or if she's actually trans. Often, it feels like trans folk have to be extremely certain of their own identity in order to prove or debate their way into receiving acceptance. And I like that the writing of Mako shows candidly the fact that not everyone is able to pinpoint who they are and how they feel, especially at a young age. Another character mentioned that I'd just like to add on the side so that this video doesn't get even longer would be Chizuru, whose wiki page quote is literally, "I will wear a boy's school uniform if I feel like it, and tomorrow I may wear punk street clothes to school if I want to. She does what she wants to do. Bye bye bicycle." And while Chizuru's identity is never explicitly stated, I think it's nice to see people present themselves in a gender non-conforming way without necessarily having to be trans. Overall, I think that Wandering Sun is a wonderful series that portrays the worries, obstacles, and life of trans kids. All the characters are so well written that it leaves me wanting to hear the stories and lives of the other cast members beyond the 2 mains. So give it a read if you enjoy slice of life. Moving on to Niku or Hagu, a one-shot jump series following Chiaki Ogawa, a meat-handling YouTuber who has been living with deep worries that he can't express to his father. One aspect that this one-shot conveys extremely well, in my opinion, is the portrayal of parental expectations. If your family absolutely sucked and you didn't give 2 shits about them, I think it'd be emotionally easier to just get up and leave and live your transitioned life. But Chiaki's relationship with his dad is one that is considerably close. He respects his dad and places importance on his dad's opinions, and it hits close to home personally, especially in an Asian household where, unlike Western cultures, we don't usually move out of our family homes in the first place. The fear of disappointing and hurting his single father is portrayed so well in not only his childhood flashbacks, but also in the one conversation that they share in the vehicle. In just 80 pages or so, the manga was able to show Chiaki's attempt to live as a woman for his parents, leading up to his final breaking point after hearing a certain news about his father. It's also very nice to see Chiaki's dynamic with his friend, Takato, who tries his best to be understanding and supportive. Chiaki's explanation to Takato in this scene is one that I wish more people knew. Nobody's gonna take one step and believe that it will solve everything, and somehow people seem to assume that we think that our surgery is a magical procedure that will solve all our problems. Just because it doesn't solve everything doesn't mean it isn't one step closer to our happiness, and nobody but the individual themselves should have the right to decide whether it's worth it or not. I appreciate the way this one-shot conveyed the misplaced concern that some people might have, even if it stems from a place of care, and addresses it well. Overall, I heavily recommend Niku or Hagu. Next, Shimanami Tasogare, another relatively well-known manga when it comes to representing a wide variety of folks from the LGBT community. Shimanami Tasogare is a statement about the reality of LGBT people in Japan, centered around a building atop a steep hill with a lounge open for all, and housing an unusual group of friendly people, each with their own story to tell. I'll be focusing on 2 characters this time round, although every single character in Shimanami Tasogare are equally worth delving into. The first character I'll be talking about is Misora, a young child who dolls up in flowy dresses and pretty wigs. I dress like this for myself. I wear these clothes because I want to. Misora comes off as confident, stoic at times, and assertive, spitting straight bars that end up being one of my favorite sets of dialogue in the manga. Misora shoots down the instinctive assumption of the main character, Tasuku, that surely Misora had to be gay for dressing up effeminately, by asking Tasuku why he, then, doesn't dress as a girl, since he is attracted to men. Despite it all, Misora is ultimately still a child exploring their identity, and I think that's beautiful. Dressing a certain way because you want to, having things you want to do, yet being uncertain of the implications of what that means in relevance to your identity is a very real experience that many go through in their journey of exploring themselves. And honestly speaking, I don't think coming to a fixed conclusion is necessary at all, if one doesn't feel compelled to place a label upon themselves in the first place. The next character I'll be talking about is, of course, Utsumi. A large part of what drives Utsumi's character arc in the manga is the presence of Koyama, who, to put it as civilly as possible, I would very much like to bludgeon with a chair. You can fight against malice, but there's no point in fighting good intentions. It's such an annoyingly apt way of putting it, because while it is true to some extent that everything Koyama does stems from not malice, but out of the want to help, although in the self-righteous sense, she ends up speaking over the one who should be the one setting his own boundaries, Utsumi himself. This panel is so funny to me because I don't really peg myself as the kind of person to get extreme emotional reaction from the media that I consume. But this page made me so unbelievably angry that I just burst out laughing the very first time I read it. Truly the lion, the witch, and the audacity of this bitch. Different people have different thresholds when it comes to answering questions about their experiences, and I'm aware that there are people who do find it disrespectful when cis or curious people in general ask questions about the trans experience that could have easily been Googled. But I think that boundary is for each individual to set. Koyama talking over Utsumi, who didn't mind answering the question in the first place, was a gratingly accurate example of how unrelated parties butt into the matters of others and defend them under the guise of social justice. This is a case I'm sure many people have differing opinions on, but personally speaking, protecting or defending someone just because they're from a minority group can sometimes come off as looking down on them or viewing them as people who require protection in the first place. Koyama referring to trans people as people like that, or preaching about encouraging her child to reach out to them, yet never considering the possibility of a child being part of the LGBT community, is the perfect portrayal of that particular attitude that so many people in our current society seem to have. Hate the sin, love the sinner, as if someone's identity was a sin in the first place. I'll forgive you, as if wanting to be one's true self was anything that warranted forgiveness. But above all, I love how at the end of the day, Utsumi is able to conclude that wanting someone to see or accept my true self. I can't live like that, getting so worked up. And lastly, if you've managed to stick around this long, I finally bring to you one of my favorite mangas of all time, Kanojo ni Naritai, Kimi to Boku. This manga is hands down my go-to recommendation for trans rap in manga, and it's actually the manga that I sent to my friends when coming out. Kanojo ni Naritai, Kimi to Boku follows the story of two childhood friends, Hime Sakuragaike and Akira Yonezawa. Hime has been in love with Akira since they were kids, but only recently found out that Akira identifies as female. Not wanting Akira to be singled out, Hime aggressively sticks up for her and tries to put herself in Akira's shoes. I think this manga works well for both those who are reading for relatability and those who are reading for perspective or understanding, due to how many perspectives were shown throughout the manga. It covers the perspectives of Akira, a trans girl, her best friend Hime, and other classmates with varying levels of knowledge on LGBT topics prior to Akira coming out. The part that hit really hard was reading the conversation scene between Akira and her father. I won't tell you anymore to cut it any shorter, but just promise me that you won't grow it out any longer either, so that when you regret the choices you've made someday, once you stop wearing the girl's uniform, make sure that you can go back to being a boy anytime. Parents have good intentions when saying things of that sort, but the doubt and lack of trust and the way they're so certain that it'll be viewed as a childish mistake or a phase is so hurtful. To see Akira in that dilemma, I can't be a boy, but I'm not able to be a girl either, or feeling like she has to look like a girl to be seen as a girl. I love how her crush on her upperclassman, Hasegawa, was later revealed upon reflection to be because she thought that she would be just like a girl if she had a crush like that. Like falling in love in a stereotypical shoujo manga way would be the door to her maidenhood. You don't have to entrust your value to someone else's heart. Your value comes from you accepting yourself. It's such a good lesson, and honestly, I feel like the presence of their teacher, Sasaki, really brought the whole manga together with insightful reflections and heartfelt counseling sessions. Sasaki himself is a wonderful representation of an ace character, sharing his feelings about not feeling understood due to not having romantic feelings for anyone. The hurt he felt after being told, "You just haven't found someone you truly love yet," is accurate to the sentiments of my friends in the same boat. Even if others don't understand me, that doesn't have any bearing on my own value. Good role models or adult figures bring so much joy to come across, and what makes Sasaki one of the coolest and most respectable characters in this whole manga is how secure he is. On top of the wonderful portrayal of Akira's feelings and growth as a woman, I really enjoy that they wrote from Hime's point of view as well. Her care for and crush on Akira, together with her good intent to defend and protect her, makes for some very interesting series of events. The aggressiveness of her protection, together with the complicated feelings of falling for Akira before Akira came out, brings forth the questions about not only her sexuality, but for whose sake she was actually protecting Akira for. It also serves as a great example of how good intentions may not always produce a good result, or be conveyed in a way that the recipient can be thankful for. Of course, there are in turn characters whose initial reactions are less favorable, such as misgendering Akira or considering her a point of fascination. There are some characters who, although acknowledging Akira's identity, treat her as if she were a different kind of female, or hold her by male standards, such as in terms of her strength. I think it's an important portrayal to have as well, since it does happen quite frequently in real life, and reading about the hurt that unintentional words, actions, or prejudice can bring is very helpful. Realistically, some characters are left unchanging in their sentiment, while others have their mind changed, going to show how important education is. And I don't believe that people should be helped by their past ignorance, especially if they're changed and or are taking the initiative to educate themselves. And finally, I would like to talk about one of my all-time favorite parts of this manga. One of the themes I appreciate the most to see portrayed would be the distinction between gender presentation and gender identity. Not everyone who presents a certain way necessarily identifies as the gender associated with the manner in which they're dressed. And much like Hime, Hamura also has his own reasons for presenting femininely outside of school. I enjoy that the manga addressed how conventional beauty, or looking good, can cause suffering too. No side is portrayed to be the ideal, as much as each party may find the grass greener on the other side. There are characters who want to be beautiful. There are characters who suffer from it. There are characters who yearn for what each other has, fighting for what they feel would be right for each other, hurting and learning from it. There are characters who want to be loved and characters who suffer from that love. Nobody's wish is written as right or wrong. Nobody's experiences are written as more or less. And I think that's the best part about Kanojo ni Naritai, Kimi to Boku. And if you've listened all the way, or even if you skipped to the titles that caught your attention, I thank you so much for joining me on this very self-indulgent Ramble review. I started this channel with one of my biggest goals being to make a video like this for Pride Month. But then Trans Day of Visibility rolled around and I really wanted to do something for it. It's kind of rushed, but if you enjoyed this style of review ramblings, I hope to see you again during Pride Month, where I'll be talking about other series like Boys Run the Riot, Here You Are, Hanoyome wa Motodanshi, My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, and many more. Once again, I'm so thankful to have you guys here and listening to me. If this is your first video of mine, thank you for dropping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.